Hey, it's your girl, Stacey Bullock, your host of Tools for Everyday Living. And we are back for literally another Free Your Mind Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I hope you all have some popcorn, you got your paper and pencil, and you're sitting at the edge of your seat to hear what we are talking about today, mental health from a Black man's perspective. We know we can't cover all Black men's perspective, but we can definitely give you some perspective to think about. So, as we stated last week, and I hope you were with us. If you were not, go back, subscribe, like, share, download, binge watch Tools for Everyday Living, but especially watch last week's show where we begin this month of mental health awareness. And we're going to be talking on a topic every Friday until the end of May. So last week we embarked a little bit about the subject of mental health, how it affects us. Today we're just going to go a little bit further into a personal perspective, but we still want to take this opportunity to bring this topic to awareness. Make sure that we're all paying attention. Make sure that we're listening. Make sure that we are doing our part to participate in the healthy conversation about mental health. There's a lot of conversations that happen and they may not all be healthy, but we want to take this time to promote it as something that is positive, something that we all can benefit from, not just a certain group of people. Every one of us who has a mind can benefit from the topic of mental health. And I believe that's 100% of these viewers watching this show right now, because if you're alive, you have a mind and it needs to be healthy. One of the clips that rolled past when we were coming on talks about why we need these tools, why we need these benefits of a healthy mind. And it will stretch widely across every area of our lives. We're going to discuss how religion and what part does it play when we talk about mental health. And I keep saying we, yes, because I have a fantastic guest on here today. He has graciously agreed to be with us for the whole month. We're going to incorporate some others with us here soon, next week. But today it is myself and Pastor W. Eric Crooms. He is a faith influencer, and we're going to hear about him, a little short snippet. I'm sure it does not encompass all of who he is and all of the knowledge that he holds and wants to share with us. But here's a little snippet.
I'm Pastor W. Eric Crooms, and this is the Believer's Report. Black religious faith is facing perhaps its most challenging period.
Pastor W. Eric Crooms is a faith influencer, speaker, and transformation coach who values dedication, service, and excellence. As a ministry leader and coach for close to 4 decades. Pastor C brings a unique, transformative, and holistic perspective to the lives of his clientele, empowering his following to unleash their purpose for a purpose and bring good to the community. Using real-world examples and biblical anecdotes, Pastor C unveils how each person in the life of your organization brings a wealth of promise that can be used toward positive and purposeful change. A native of Phoenix, Arizona, and author of 6 books, Pastor C learned the value of dedication and service coming up as the third of 6 children whose parents, the Reverends Charlie and Dorothy Crooms, were themselves exemplar models for ministry. Pastor C founded and is CEO of the Charlie and Dorothy Crooms Foundation, a nonprofit organization which seeks to improve the wellness of the community.
And here we have Pastor W. Eric Crooms with us. Thank you again, sir, for joining us. We are so appreciative.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Stacy, for launching this very important conversation about mental health in our communities. Much needed. Thank you.
Yes, so much needed. It stems from so far back, as we were discussing earlier before the show even started, that there are eons and years, probably thousands of years of information regarding mental health. But for whatever the reason, it's kind of got shoved under the rug, if you will, or shoved in the basement, or shoved in their own room, and no one to bother them in the Black community, and particularly our Black men. I want to just, start out, since I did bring up some historical stuff that is back there. Can you tell us what are some of the historical factors that have impacted, especially the Black male community?
Yeah, there are so many. We discussed briefly last week about the fact that, coming up out of slavery, how our ancestors had to deal with the realities of everyday living, not only through slavery, but coming up out of slavery, not having anything but the clothes on their back, right? And they had to find a way to survive. And I think the feeling, or the for lack of a better word, the understanding that developed out of that horrible period in our history is that if you don't find a way to survive, then you are considered weak. And that, unfortunately, is one of the byproducts of slavery that has followed us up into the 21st century, where now it's a stigma associated, especially with the male, that if you are too strong, if you don't show yourself to be strong, you're considered weak. And so you have to have this hyper masculinity about yourself. So, but in terms of the historical factors outside of slavery, there were so many epical moments when faith and religion basically, or faith and mental health, I should say, basically coexisted. People were, kind of satisfied with the notion that they were created by God, and they could pray, they could go to Bible study and do things of that nature. And then around maybe mid-century, during the 20th century, Brother Sigmund Freud came along, right? And he kind of flipped everything on his head about the relationship between religion and mental health. And from that school of thought, the feeling became that religion was a type of insidious, had a type of insidious impact upon mental health. And so since then, there's been this back and forth between the secular and the religious community about the validity of our personal faith and what role it plays in our lives. I mean, you can log on to Facebook anytime, any day, and you'll see this war shaping out on a daily basis in terms of how the secular realm looks at faith and religion and the church in particular, and you'll see a whole bunch of accusations, charges, and things of that nature. But what we are now discovering, well, actually not now, but in the last 25 years, Stacy, we have discovered some wonderful things about how faith impacts us in terms of our mental health. And I just want to remind your viewers, by the way, that I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I speak from a faith perspective. And so that faith is my expertise. The way the mind works and the mental illnesses and the medications required and all of that is not my expertise. So I speak from a faith perspective on how faith informs our mental health. And so what we have discovered is that faith has a very positive effect on mental health, contrary to the Freudian school of the feeling that we weren't, that we're in some ways our mind is ravaged by religion, things of that nature, or faith in God or trust in God. But now we know that it's the exact opposite, because now several studies have found that high levels of faith commitment correlate now with lower levels of depression and stress. That's a huge factor. And also another large scale study found that that people who did not attend church were 4 times as likely to commit suicide than were frequent church attendees. That blows my mind. That when you have a well-grounded, faith-based religious system, that you are more likely to deal with the negative. You're going to be more likely to deal successfully with the vicissitudes of life. So in spite of the historical record, I think we as believers, we now have proof, and of course we ourselves are proof. The way that we live out our lives, the strength factor, the way that we treat one another, our strength in God, our belief in God, we know that faith plays an important part in our lives. And the greater your belief system, the more likely you are going to be able to move through your darkest periods. We know that for sure.
For sure. For sure. I want to know, so because of the statistics that you just quoted us, I want to know, how can we incorporate mental health treatment into ministry?
That's a great question. I think it's imperative that ministry leaders, clergy leaders, and others understand that there is not a divide between the spiritual and the mental. And I think that's really the biggest hurdle that we have to cross right there. The biggest chasm that we have to cross is to stop thinking compartmentally about the relationship of spiritual to mental. Because what's really at the heart of the stigma as it relates to mental health, in my opinion, is the fact that we've been conditioned to think that that mental health issues point to a spiritual failure, or that we just, we're suffering mentally because we did something wrong spiritually, or we don't measure up spiritually. No, that's the furthest thing from the truth. And the Bible speaks for this relationship of the spiritual and mental throughout the holy writ. So I think in order for us to really be effective in making our mental health a part of ministry, we have to bridge that divide, and we have to understand that there is an interrelationship between our spiritual faculties and our mental. Then we can begin to have a very real conversation with between those in ministry and those whom we lead. I mentioned last week that there are some signs that this is happening. There are some mega churches and medium-sized churches who are beginning to see the good in fostering a relationship between mental health professionals and clergy. But it's so important that if we're going to make it an effective ministry and really, really help people, I mean, really get down into the trenches where they are, because people are really hurting mentally. And, you know, a lot of experts point to the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic played a huge role in our current mental status as a people in the Black community. But in reality, it began long before the pandemic, right? So it's something that we have to be willing to engage on that level. But the first step, to me, in my opinion, is to get past this thinking that there is a divide between the spiritual and the mental.
There is no divide. I just actually just Googled really quick about mental health, and, you know, just to give people an idea of, yes, we can go to the Bible for everything. And in
Exactly.
Psalm 34:18, it says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit."
Exactly.
And I believe that, you know, when we are brokenhearted, when we experience traumas, when we experience things that would want to crush our spirit, crush our motivation, crush our will to do, I believe that when, like you said, I won't say necessarily going to a church building, what I will say is connecting with people who have spiritual insight and that could
Right.
lead and guide us. I believe that this is where, yes, we can have our spirits saved, our motivation saved. Our, you know, people think, oh, saved, that means you're not going to hell. Well, it means a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're talking about it today. It is the component of being saved will assist you in your mental health, because when our spirits are broken, God has the ability to lift us up out of places. And I'm definitely someone who is well aware. Most people will say I'm a witness, and I am a witness, and am well aware of how God
Exactly.
can bring you back from a place of detriment in your mind.
Right.
This and I just want to know.
And if you go back, Stacey, if you go back to the scripture that you just read or quoted, also verse 17 begins, "The righteous cry out." These are
Mhm,
believers. These are the people of God. And
mhm.
David says, "The righteous cry out." Listen, the righteous are crying out today. Believers are crying out today. Everybody thinks, well, oh no, I'm a believer, so I don't have any issues. I just trust God. God's got me. No, 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 no. The righteous cry out. The righteous suffer from mental health issues. The righteous suffer from brokenness. The righteous suffer from depression and anxiety. In fact, if you search scripture, you will see that some of the greatest men and women in the entire Bible suffered from depression and anxiety. Right? I mean, we have, David, one of the greatest warrior kings in the entire Bible, suffered from depression. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet. Job says, "I loathe my life." And then, if that doesn't convince you, let's bring it back. Let's bring it up to the modern century. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hear me now. He suffered from depression and anxiety. So the thinking is, well, if God, I guess the thinking could be, God can't use me because I'm in this state. I have this state of mind, or I'm suffering from this or that. And the Bible proves the opposite, because all of those people I mentioned, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., were used greatly by God. So just to make that point, the righteous are crying out. We have to accept that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Didn't mean to
Because,
start preaching.
oh, you're fine. You're fine. We live here on this earth. So there are
Correct.
things that we are not immune from. Even
Exactly.
though people may feel like you just said, oh, I have God and I don't need anything else. Well, God has put some stuff here in place for
Exactly.
us to benefit from. I just don't understand sometimes why people would feel like prayer is all you need. No, we need so much more. We need all of the things that are here to go parallel, as we talked about last week, parallel with prayer,
Exactly.
therapy, you know, exercise, eating right, sleeping right, drinking enough water. These are all things that being in the sunlight will contribute to our mental health well-being. Talk to us a little bit about your perspective of the Black man and his journey in mental health.
Yeah. So it's one of those issues that is at the forefront of the struggle for the empowerment of Black men in America. And, I don't have to really sit here and go back into history. We all know what the struggle has been. We know what the struggle has been for Black people, period,
Mm-hmm.
going back to slavery. But in particular, the Black male in America has suffered tremendously in terms of being able to adjust to what we call the American experience, right? And so currently there are probably close to 5 million, depending on which report you want to go with, but at least 5 million men of color, Black men who suffer from some type of mental health issue. Now, obviously, there are different levels of mental illness. Again, like I said last week, if you're dealing with acute schizophrenia, other types of psychosomatic disorder, things of that nature, obviously, that's an arena for professional help, right? And so, but we have to be we have to get ourselves to the point where we're okay with getting professional help, like you just said, that we can pray and seek therapy and understand that God has ordained both. But yeah, Black males, I read a report a couple of weeks ago that up to 80% of all attempted suicides in the Black community were done so by Black males, Black men. So that's a very telling reality there. And so I guess we have to look at it from a perspective of how can we help? What can we do? Because we know that at the same time that Black men tend to be more autonomous, independent thinkers in terms of their masculinity and how to deal with their own, individual challenges. And so it's hard to really touch that spirit sometimes because it's so shelled up, it's so full of armor and hardness and roughness. And then when you live in a culture that rewards that type of mental interior, through hyper masculinity, all of the television shows, the movies, and tough guy image, things of that nature, it's rather difficult to scale that mountain. And I think we have to, in ministry, we have to find ways to connect. And there are a lot of churches that have, programs that are tuned to helping Black men deal with the inner issues from a spiritual perspective. That's number one, a spiritual perspective, but not always to deal with it mentally. And I think that's where we need to kind of shore it up and get our brothers together and make them understand that, yeah, we're here for you spiritually and even mentally and emotionally. But if it is a situation where you need to get additional help or external help, by all means do it. So we have to, I think, just understand how we have been shaped by our so-called American experience and understand the psychological factors that have played into that, and the social factors and the political factors. All of those things play a role. I mean, we don't like to talk about politics in the Black community a lot, especially in the religious community, but the fact is politics is one of the things that is driving us crazy, right? Just look at the current political atmosphere that we live in now. Look at the reaction, the backlash of the religious right against everything. Every step that we make as a people is being thrown back 2 steps or more, right? I mean, so it's like collectively we're facing this huge tsunami of opposition from just about every segment of American society. But then we say, well, God's got us. All we got to do is pray it away. And I'm here to say, Stacey, it ain't working. Okay? It ain't working. And I will also say that racism is the leading cause of death for Black people in America. Okay? I know that's a strong statement. It's extraordinary. It sounds foolish. But if you look at how racism has played a part in just about every segment of who we are as a people, you will agree with it, because racism kills by subjugating access to wellness and positive outcomes. You look at our people, we're at the top of every negative outcome across many sectors, and we're at the bottom of every positive. So racism kills by subjugating access to positive outcomes. So when it comes to health, when it comes to crime and punishment, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to, even just buying a home, we are faced with these racist structures, and it's impacting us mentally, but we don't want to talk about it, right?
Right.
We'll just work our way through it, and it's not working because suicide in our community is on the rise, and it has been on the rise for quite some time.
Right. I'm going to make this statement. We're going to go for a break, but when we come back, we want to talk about, you segued us right into the next thought that came to my mind of, do you think there is a racial, economic, and social disparity when it comes to mental health, and why? But I want to share this little story. And I have tenants in my home in California. And when the family came, 2 children, wife, father, African American, the unusual standard. But something was said to me by the father that they had been looking for 2 years to get out of the place that they were in, which was not a great place in Los Angeles.
Right.
And it just, when you started talking, it just sparked me as to what the depth of what I was seeing in the dad when I accepted their application, and the words that he was saying to me. He said, "You just don't even know what you have just done for my family." And I was so happy that he was so vulnerable with me that when we signed the lease, he cried.
Wow.
Because of the impact of the, disparities that we are talking about right now had caused this family to almost implode because the dad was so stressed about finding a safe place for his family to live.
Yeah. Wow.
And I experienced what you are what we're talking about today, and it was heartbreaking but heartwarming to know that I believe that God would use me to help this family. And I'm just so excited. But when we come back, let's talk about some of those, the whys of the disparity. What in the world? Where did this? I can't say where it came from because we just brought it up a little bit, but you can just tell us a little bit more about where it came from when we come back. And
Absolutely.
this little segment is going to talk to us about breaking cycles. And I think we are onto something when we talk about bringing mental health awareness to the forefront of ministry, to the place where people get healed.
Breaking anything is always a challenging process, but life is one big process. A large series of steps we take to achieve a specific goal. Ending a repetitive pattern that is harmful for us is something we must commit to do because we need to show up as our best self and not the trapped imposter. It is time to eliminate some weight. The weight of doubt, shame, and disappointment. Get rid of thoughts of you are not enough. You are more than enough. You can break old patterns that were not the best representation of who you are. From this day forward, begin to pay attention to your patterns of behavior and see if they line up with your goals and dreams. Make sure to commit wholeheartedly to everything you do, intentionally making sure it is beneficial for promoting your growth to greatness. Let's dismantle all cycles that discourage instead of encourage. It is time to live a life in the abundance of love and peace, which will produce healthy habits that will lead us to being our best self. Always be awesome.
Resilience is necessary for all of us. It gives us the ability to recover quickly from difficulties of any kind. Psychologically, resilience is our mind's potential to cope with a crisis and return to a healthy state of mind. Resilience is the core strength you use to lift the load of life. The secret to maintaining and building to adopt a growth mindset, nurture your emotional intelligence, hone in on our problem-solving skills. We must learn from problems, take them as opportunities to grow. That's what resilience looks like. It is the demonstration of growth and maturity in every area of our lives.
And just like that, we're back. And we're going to talk about some of the disparities, this racial, social, economic disparities in the Black community that cause Black, not saying it's not the only cause, but it contributes to the mental health of our Black men. Because I know for sure that when men feel like you can't provide for your family or you can't, get to where you want to go, it affects you all mentally and differently than it
Correct.
does a woman.
Absolutely, it does. And that's just keeping it real. It does. And I just wish that more of us knew and accepted that fact, and to know that we are in this together as Black men and Black women in America, and that what has happened to one has negatively impacted the other, and vice versa. And so what has happened is that this war of the black sexes has erupted, and it's always going at full throttle up, and there seems to be less understanding and less empathy between us because we don't accept the fact that, listen, we are in this thing together. We are in this American experience together. We have been since slavery, when the slave masters raped our women, sexually assaulted our women, when they took our children from us, that we were impacted by that. So, as I said earlier, racism kills by subjugating access to wellness and positive outcomes. So as that reality has continued, what we have seen is a whole bunch of maladies that has resulted. And I mentioned it, a few of them earlier, but it's our mental health, prenatal care, healthcare in general, our financial well-being, affordable housing, and the criminal justice system. So we have to understand that this estrangement began very early in our sojourn in this country.
Very early. Very early, like from day one.
Yeah, and what happened, Stacey, was that we, as a result of coming up out of slavery, again, the backlash. I talked about the white backlash, which has been evident in just about every generation of Black folk in this country. There has been a corresponding societal and cultural backlash against Black progress. So this detachment from the medical establishment also began quite early in our community, where we just didn't trust them. But at the same time, through segregation practices, Jim Crow, etc., and just by enacting different types of laws, we were restricted from a lot of this access. And so then you have the result of what I call Black paranoia, which was well grounded, right? Because, think about the Tuskegee experiment, where they were actually experimenting on Black men. And think about how that has traveled through the generations and on up to this 21st century since it happened. Okay. And so that has garnered a detachment from the medical establishment, along with the fact that we were denied access. So we have to understand that history and deal with it the best way we can. But I think, if you ask me, are things getting better? We've made progress, but there's still a lot of instances where Black people suffer access or denial of access to the mental health establishment. And quite frankly, I was just reading a day or so ago about the fact that there is a dearth of Black psychologists. I mean, they're actually lamenting the fact that there aren't enough Black psychologists, psychiatrists, things of that nature. So it's a across the board phenomenon, and it's been with us for quite some time.
Yes, too long. And I'm hoping that discussions like this one and others will spark a fire, if you will, to get us moving in the direction of, promoting students when they're in school to think about becoming a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I do have a 4-year degree in science of psychology, And that, I mean, just taking those 4 years really kind of opened my eyes up. And the reason why I did it is because I was so wanting to help people and still want to help people that I had to study what makes us go, humans. And so now this added component is coming to me now, about looking at it from a cultural perspective. Like, wow, I didn't even think when I started school that there was this wide disparity, even though I don't know why I didn't know that, because working as a civil servant, I discovered that, I guess maybe 5 years ago, which is so outdated. I mean, not outdated, but it took long enough. That's what I'll say, to create minority groups, work groups that would study about the disparities in the health arena, which mental health falls under that. But this was just 5 years ago. We've been here way more. We've been here longer than 5 years.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so it's like, why did it take so long for somebody to say, oh, we need a whole group to get some understanding about this particular group of people, this population? I think it's so sad, especially when it comes to our law enforcement, because that's something that the agency that I'm a civil servant for look at, and we do trainings for law enforcement to help them understand when someone is having a mental crisis.
Right.
Why is that not already incorporated in in their training that they have to take to become a police officer? Institute a major component of mental health, what it looks like. And I think that, there may be some people still alive today, if someone had paid attention to, this person is not belligerent or drunk or, about to cause harm to another person. They are having a mental health crisis, and they cannot determine what they're doing is wrong. And so I'm almost got like you just now. Excuse me for getting a little getting a little hyped up, but it just bothers me to know that people would allow a race of people to go so long without the care that is needed, and now we have whole communities that are being filled with so much death and violence and economic insecurities and food insecurities, housing insecurities, that people are losing it. Because the mind, it's a delicate place.
Yes.
It really is a delicate place. And what do you think that we can do right now?
What can we do right now? That's always the relative question. What can we do right now? What can I do today? How can I give? Well, first of all, we have to understand that we can do something, and it's going to take a village. I think we have kind of moved away from that whole village concept in our community, because I can sit here and I can reference the general society in terms of how we've been treated, the racist structures, things of that nature. But on the flip side of that, as you say, what can we do right now? So one of the things we can do is we can begin, and I'm speaking again from a faith perspective, and I think the faith community, clergymen, laypersons, and ministerial leaders, We can give leadership by doing this. We can collaborate with mental health organizations. As I said earlier, there are signs that is beginning to crescent, but we need more of it. I think I also said, I asked a friend of mine just a basic question. I asked her, well, does your church have a wellness ministry? And she texted me back and said, no, we are a very small church. Everybody wears a different hat or something along those lines. And to myself, I said, well, even a small church, I don't care if it's 5 people, 10 people, every church of color, every Black church in our community, in my opinion, needs to have some type of wellness ministry. Now, we can say that, you know, just going to church is a wellness ministry. Hattie McDaniel, the famous mid-20th century actor, said that faith to Black people is like the Federal Reserve System, right? But we need to have something, even if it's a small church or a mega church, and I know that many mega churches probably do offer some type of wellness ministry, but there should not be a church open in America, in Black America, that does not have a wellness ministry. And included in that wellness ministry, Stacy, is also mentoring for its black boy demographic, because one of my passions, as you know, is mentoring. That's why I started the Kusama Project, because I want to help Black and brown boys become more proficient readers and get up to the level where they are loving books and loving to read and not looking at it as something as a burden. So that's the number one thing we can do. We can also, as I said, we can launch wellness and mental health ministries. We can intervene, back to the Black boy demographic. We can intervene in Black boy mental health. One of the shocking statistics that I ran across recently is that the age group of 15 to 24 Black males is the fastest growing demographic for suicide or suicide ideation in the Black community. Our children, and a lot of this, of course, has to do with social media, the psychological ramifications from that sector, but we can intervene in their mental health, and we must do it at an early stage, because if our Black boys are not reading proficiently by at least 8th grade, their future is going to be quite dismal. And then the other thing we can do is we can advocate more. I know that we are doing so. The Congressional Black Caucus is advocating for a lot of funding, legislation for the faith community, for these funds to be released so that we can begin to offer these programs on the boots, on the street level. And so those are some of the things that we can do right now as a faith community. Now, again, I'm not saying that we aren't doing it. Obviously, there are, we have a tremendous amount of Black churches in our communities across America. So I don't know exactly what every church is doing. And as I said earlier, there are signs that we are beginning to do more, but we need more people to join in that cause.
Yes. I think we need, what I'm picturing in my mind, that there was I don't know what the logo was for, but there was a world, and then there were people holding hands standing around the globe.
Right.
And I think if we can look at the globe a little smaller and look at the Black community as a collective, and those of us who are, I'll say, minding up, if I can, you know how they say man up, woman up, let's
Right.
mind up. And then create that link, that chain around the communities that we live in. First of all, our homes is our first community that I believe that we can start in and kind of dismantle this trickle-down effect that I want you talk a little bit more about to our young Black men. We need to stop that hemorrhage.
Right, right.
And I just want you to interject for a couple of minutes about how important it is for us to stop this trickle down effect to our young men.
Yeah, it's very important. And it's, to me personally, it's very distressing because, listen, we cannot expect our Black boys to grow up and become healthy body, mind, and spirit if the men themselves, if we are struggling and we are not reaching out, not only to make ourselves better, but to ensure that the little boys that are coming up from behind are going to have better. And I'm not just speaking of the father-son dynamic. I'm speaking of the community dynamic as well. Because, when you think about it, a Black church in the middle of an urban context, we may have families who have Black boys, and we are able to directly minister to that segment in our churches through Bible study, youth camps, things of that nature. But what about the boys that are on the outside in those same communities, who are detached and who are losing hope, quite frankly? And so this trickle-down effect has to be premised on a desire to reverse it and to intervene at an early stage. And that's why, again, I referenced the reading. One of the hallmarks or landmarks that we can use to gauge our effectiveness as a community and as a faith community is to attach ourselves to Black boy literacy. Because let's face it, again, if these Black boys are struggling with reading and they can't even read an application or fill out an application in their later years because they've been less than able readers throughout their elementary careers and kindergarten, we have to do something about that. And this also points to what we talked about earlier, the way the dominant society, who, their teachers, their school psychology officials, the way they see our boys is quite different than how we see our boys. And there is a plethora of evidence out there. In fact, I read one earlier this morning that most Caucasian teachers, principals, and administrators, they lack the cultural understanding of Black boys and Black girls, for that matter. Right. And as a result, these kids are leading most school districts in expulsions and being expelled from school and suspended from school. That disturbs me. Not only as a mentor, but as a faith influencer, I'm disturbed by that because it points to, again, a cultural chasm. And so, but getting back to what we can do, we just need to intervene and understand that our Black boys who are going to become Black men, they need early intervention. They need a community that cares about them, that shows that they are valued, and that they are, we care about you. I think it was Frederick Douglass who said, or if I may paraphrase him, that, don't wait until the boy becomes a man to minister to him, because by then he's going to be a broken man. So we have to get them in the early stages and reverse that trickle down, that mental health trickle down effect that we see happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Time flies, as they say, when you're having fun. And right. I'm going to say that we're having fun, but the subject itself is not fun.
Right.
I believe we're having fun being able to express the concerns that we have, being able to express the solutions that we have regarding mental health and our community as African Americans. So, again, Pastor W. Eric Crooms, I want to thank you for joining us. It is a pleasure, it's a delight as always. You bring a wealth of knowledge to us. And I know that somebody on the other side of this screen is having an aha moment experience and thinking of what can I do? And you don't have to be African American, Black. You don't have to be a Hispanic. You can be of any race, any culture to be able to reach out and help.
Exactly. Well
Pastor,
said.
yes,
Well
thank
said.
you. Thank you. Tell the people how they can reach you. I know some people may have questions that they just don't want to put on a major chat of thankfully 23,000 viewers right now, probably more by time we get finished with this show. But give them your information so that they can reach out to you as a faith influencer.
Absolutely. My website is pastorwericrooms.com. My email is info@pastorwericrooms.com. That's CROOMES. On Facebook, I just launched a special page called Black Men Mental Wellness. Feel free to reach out there. In fact, I would love to hear from brothers on that page, Black Men Mental Wellness on Facebook. We are committed to the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being of Black men across the diaspora. And we want to do that through empowerment, affirmation, and other means. So Black Men Mental Wellness on Facebook. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, viewers, for joining us for another Free Your Mind Friday on Tools for Everyday Living. We are here at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, always be awesome.
Amen.
Have you found yourself wondering, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Recognizing the Stranger in the Mirror is the book for you. It helps us to unravel the mystery of who you really are, revealing your life's passion and why you should unveil the real you to the world. We need you. You are valuable and necessary for those who are connected to you. Do not be afraid to peek in and discover all your gifts and talents to share. It's real freedom when we reveal our authenticity. Stacey Bullock is a 2-time best-selling author, transformational speaker, and host of Tools for Everyday Living TV show. She is committed to igniting resilience, personal transformation, and building life skills of her audiences and clients. The author of 2 previously written self-help books, Beaten Oil and Regain Power Through Resilience, Don't Let Your Brain Go Numb. Stacey imparts lessons that teaches readers to utilize their light as a guide for others, and discovering inner strength and resiliency to bounce back when life throws curveballs. Stacey may be reached for speaking engagements, leadership and employee training, and life skills coaching via her email at stacey@powerandresilience.com.